Hello everyone, my name's Timothy Roberts. I'm a guest saxophonist with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, and I'm also professor of saxophone at Shenandoah Conservatory in Winchester, Virginia. It's a pleasure to be here for you today, and it's time for another year of TMEA All-State Auditions. So I graduated from J.J. Pierce High School in Richardson almost 40 years ago, and I did these exact same auditions when I was your age, and ironically, the Ferling book was the same book that we used back then. Of course, the Etudes are different every year, and this year you all are going to be using Etudes number 12 and 29 and 32. There's different editions of these Ferling Etudes. You all are going to be using the Southern edition, which is the exact same one. It's always been. But you should also know that there's at least 7 or 8 different editions of this, but there's 2 editions in particular that have written piano accompaniments that have been added to these Etudes, and some of them work really nicely. There is a Hal Leonard edition that has been edited by Nobuya Sagawa, and there is also a Carl Fischer edition that's edited by John Walker. Both of these editions have really neat piano accompaniments, and it will work really well. What I like to do is to take 6 of these Etudes with the piano accompaniment and put them into a little 10-minute suite for a recital, and you can change the Etudes around and put them in any different order that you want based on the makeup of your audience. But it's a nice little recital edition if that's what you would like to do. So we're going to take a look now at these Etudes 12, 29, and 32. We will play each one for you, and then take a minute or 2 and talk about some suggestions on how you can play them better. So we'll start with number 12. Okay, so let's talk about this number 12. We'll make some, on each of these Etudes, we'll make some general comments, and then we'll talk more specifically. I think generally for number 12, there's 2 things that you want to be thinking about. This is marked Allegro Furioso. Furioso is not just the tempo, it has to be the style also. You've got to be full of fury when you play this. If you're not furious when you play it, it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to lose points. The second general suggestion on this is to maintain consistency, both as far as the tempo and playing this with 0 mistakes. This Etude is only about 60 seconds long. It's by far the shortest of the 3 Etudes you're going to play, and it needs to be furious and relentless all the way through and consistently free of mistakes. Really from the time it starts to the time it finishes, it never lets up on any energy. There's no releases of energy at any point through this. Let's start out talking about the first 8 bars, and I suggest that you treat these first 8 bars as 2 4-bar phrases. On each phrase, you want a crescendo for 2 bars and then decrescendo for 2 bars. I know the music isn't specifically marked to do this, but the phrasing is applied this way. Interestingly enough, it is marked to do this when it's in the B statement. It measures 13 and 14. It's just not marked here, but I think that would be a good idea for you. Let's talk about some breathing ideas. Let me go through where I have marked breaths for this. I'd recommend breathing after the first beat of measure 5, a quick breath after the downbeat of measure 9. When the pattern changes, this is similar to measure 17. And that breath's going to be unconventional, so you want to make it sound pretty deliberate. and intentional coming out of there. Add some a little bit of extra time on the top C, and make it a little longer coming out of the breath. Okay, so you want to also breathe, of course, at the end of measure 12. After the downbeat of measure 17, that one is marked. After the downbeat of measure 21, and then finally, as marked after the downbeat of measure 24. You can also add another breath after the downbeat of measure 25 if you want to make sure that you finish the piece in a true Furioso style. And by the way, a word on breathing in general for as you prepare all three of these etudes. Always breathe in the same place, whether you're practicing it or performing it, getting it ready, woodshedding some of the notes, whatever. Always breathe in the same place. If you're working out, say, measures 8 and 9, for example, if you pass over that downbeat of measure 9, make sure you play it the same way every time. Even if you don't need the air, take the breath, even when you're practicing it. It will make that stopping at that point in the music a habit that you won't forget when you're full of nerves in the audition room. Okay, back to the music. Measure 7, be careful not to rush that one. Many of your colleagues are going to take advantage of that descending line to accelerate there when they shouldn't. So be conscious of that. Measure 12, put a slight tenuto on the top F. That note will tend to not be clean, so making it sound more intentional will help with the clarity of it. A few more ideas. On the last note, make it a full quarter note of value. Make it ring with some rich vibrato. Let your judges know that you've just finished the last note just as furiously as you've played the whole piece. Furioso. Okay, let's move on to Etude 29, and we will play it and then talk about it. Let's talk about 29. Amabile, of course, means friendly. You want to keep it pretty and you want to keep it friendly. This is your only excerpt that you've got, your only chance today of the 3 etudes to show your tone and your musicianship and your phrasing and your lyricism. So keep it pretty and keep it friendly as it's marked. I know it's marked quarter note at 88. That seems a little bit fast to me. You may want to do it at 88. You probably should do it pretty close to 88 because that's what the judges are going to be listening for. But play it with a little bit more of a relaxed feel, I think, than 88. What I'd recommend on this is go ahead and practice it with your metronome at 88, but see if you can get all the way through the etude, maybe on the back of the beat. There's some really neat phrases in here that I think you're gonna miss opportunities on if you try to play through everything right at 88. So try to balance out the requirements of the audition, playing it at 88 with the need to make some of these phrases a little bit more eloquent, I think. We mentioned spots for breathing in the first etude. I think all of the edited breath marks in this etude are going to work fine. Just remember to always play the last note before a breath with a little bit of tenuto when you're in a lyrical setting. Every one of these notes before a breath needs length. Measure 6 is a great opportunity to make yourself sound different than everyone else. It's the ad-lib section. It's, of course, obviously a small cadenza. There are no right or wrong ways to play this, but come up with a way to make this a personal statement on what you're going to do with the phrasing. And there's nothing wrong with you doing it totally different than the student, the performer before you or the performer after you or anyone else. But it needs to be lyrical. It needs to be your own personality. What I can do is I can suggest to you how I would do it, and you may want to take all of this or parts of this or none of this. But I would suggest taking this little section and grouping it into four-note phrases. So the first 4 notes are the slowest. They're treated as pickups into the most important note of the bar, the high D sharp. And then the high D sharp starts a grouping of 8 notes, which accelerate down, and then they slow their way back up with the last 4 notes. And those 4 notes are treated as pickups into the downbeat E of the next measure. So the last E is your resolution note that you should be aiming for. So you can do all of that, but come up with something, come up with a plan and make it sound personal and emotive also at the same time. Okay, measure 11. Really sing on the top D sharp. Use lots of vibrato here. Make that a high point. Measure 12. Put an increasing amount of tenuto on each descending downbeat. I think that will help that. Measure 15. Put a big emphasis and a big tenuto on the low A sharp. That's the turning point of the phrase. Moving ahead, let's go to measure 20. Put a full value on that quarter note. I wouldn't use any vibrato on it, but make sure that you taper the note out and the taper extends a full 2 beats. And then on the next to last bar, put a little retard on that turn. I know it's not marked, but that turn's really setting the mood for the end of your phrase, and you want to make it last a good long time if you can. And then finally, on the last 2 notes, pretend that you're playing the last note of the Old Castle in Pictures and Exhibition. You're in the most glorious concert hall of the world, and you want to let that last note ring as long as you can. So get it to extend as far as your embouchure will allow you, and then when you hear that your sound is ended, keep the horn in your mouth for another 5 seconds. You'll probably be playing this in a high school classroom or something, but try to work the acoustics of the room as best you can and let that note just simmer and kind of go into the walls of the room as long as you can. Certainly for 2 full beats, but as long as you can make it. And then you'll never know what the reverberation in the room is. So just keep the horn in your mouth for 5 seconds after you hear the end of the note. Okay, so that is your slow etude. We're going to play 32 now, which I know is going to take a lot of your time. But let's listen to 32, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Okay, so that was 32. I have a feeling that's going to be the most technically challenging of all the etudes for you. I know I spent more time learning this one than I did number 12 and number 29 combined, so it's probably going to be the same for you too. You may want to start learning this one first because it is going to take the most of your time. The good news on this one is that Ferling says you only have to play it at the dotted quarter at 72. So that's not too fast. It's fast enough, but it's not as fast as say number 12 was for you. It's an entirely reasonable tempo. I would start learning bars 17 to 20 first, 17, 18, 19, 20. Those are the hardest 4 bars in the hardest of the 3 etudes. And you're probably going to spend 70% of your time on this etude just working on these 4 bars. So let me give you some, we're going to talk about these 4 bars and then we'll go back and do some generalizations on the whole etude. But yeah, so these first 4 bars, some of you, memorization is easier for some of you than others, some of it's harder. I'm big on memorizing solo music that you have to play for technical clarity. It helps you understand the phrases better, but it also makes you much less of a chance of making a technical mistake when you get to the performance. If you're not the type to memorize your music when you play it, then I would still recommend that you memorize these first 4 bars. Memorize them, play them every day until your auditions. I know sometimes you get busy with homework and there's days that you don't have time to practice. Always make at least 10 minutes a day to practice. That's a whole nother lesson, but at least try to pull out your horn, keep your horn put together, and try to at least play, if you get a day with a lot of homework, at least play these 4 bars of number 32 every day. So as far as how to practice these 4 bars, take out the ornaments. Play the just the 5 notes in the bar. Get them all perfect, memorize them that way. Then go back in and add each ornament separately. Go back in and put the trill. And by the way, you only need to trill it once. So on the first one, on the E, you go up to the F sharp. Don't try to. That's not necessary. Just trill it once. So in effect, the trill and the 2 grace notes are going to form a turn. Okay? So the first thing I want you to do is learn the 5 notes, then put the trill in, and then go back and add, take the trill out, put the grace notes in. And then put the whole ornament together with the 5-note turn. Build your tempo up, memorize it, and then play it every day. That's the best way to learn this section. And you will get in this audition, if you get all the way to All-State, you'll get to the audition room and there still will be people that can't play these first 4, that can't play these 4 bars. So don't be one of the 4, or don't be one of those that can't play the 4 bars here, okay? One of my favorite sections in this etude is actually, those are the 4 most difficult bars, but my favorite 4 bars are the 4 bars that come out of that. I think it's genius the way that it's written, and it's not necessarily clear how it's written. You have these 4 bars, which is going to be 22, 23, 24, and 25. So it's not marked, but it's basically 12 ascending notes in 21 and 22, followed by 2 groups of 3 notes, 3 groups of 2 notes, and then it goes on from there. So it's just marked with slurs, but you should feel this bar. So especially in that last bar, put agogic accents on those 3 groups of 2 notes, and put a crescendo going through the last bar of the line so that your judge knows that you understand how this phrasing goes. It's pretty neat when you play it with an understanding of how that phrase goes. Okay, So measure 28, the descending tongued line. Are you able to double tongue? If you can't, we don't have time to get into that today, but if you are able to do it, that's a great spot to do it. You can pick up a little bit of tempo in that bar, and you don't want to rush it, but you can pick up get a little bit up on the top of the beat by double tonguing that bar to get you through the end of the line. And it would sound technically impressive also, and it would crisp up your tongue a little bit if you can double tongue that. Measure 43 and 44 can be kind of technically tricky. Just remember that those two bars are identical, and you only have to learn it once. So learn 43 and then just repeat 44. That will help you on that. And then measure 61. Keep the low C sharp down through the whole bar. It'll make your life much easier rather than trying to pick up the C sharp and putting it back down again. And then finally, in keeping consistent with the theme of all three of these etudes, you'll notice this is a big deal to me, and what I would make my students do, make your last note the very most important. In with a full quarter note value, put some rich vibrato on it, and always leave your judges with a feeling of confidence in what you're doing and how you're presenting this etude to them. Okay, so that's all three of these etudes. I'd like to leave you with some closing words that I think will help you in really any audition that you take, not just the TMEA All-State auditions, but really any audition that you take, and even if you don't major in music, that this will also help you with any passion that you might have in your life. And that is to make sure that when you enter this room, that you're grateful for what you're doing, okay? Because you can't be grateful and nervous at the same time. I know you're all going to be nervous at first, but if you go into the room grateful for the fact that you're doing what you love and what you're passionate about, and that you've made it to this point, and you're one of the best saxophone players, high school saxophone players in Texas, and you've made it to this point, and if you go into this with a feeling of gratitude and joy for being able to play for these judges, you're going to play a lot better, and you're not going to be nervous either. Because try it sometime. If you have a sense of gratefulness going in, you won't be nervous at the same time. I appreciate you listening to some of my thoughts on this music. I hope it helps you. Have fun when you go in there. That's the most important thing. If this video has helped you, I would love to hear from you. We do these videos every year. I do the Texas All-State videos, and I do Virginia All-State videos for high school students. And if you're not graduating this year, hopefully I can do one of these again for you next year. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email me. You can also find me at my website, www.timothy-roberts.com. So good luck, and I hope these go well for you and that these videos were able to help you.